The day Earth changed forever started like any other. Scientists at NASA's Deep Space Network were doing their routine checks when they picked up the signal. At first, they thought it was just another space anomaly. But within hours, massive ships appeared near Mars. Captain Sarah Chen was drinking her morning coffee at Mission Control when the first images came in. The ships were huge, each one bigger than any city on Earth. Their dark metal hulls seemed to swallow the sunlight, making them look like moving shadows in space. "Are we seeing this right?" she asked, rubbing her eyes. The room was silent except for the beeping of computers. Before anyone could answer, every screen in Mission Control turned red. A face appeared. At least, they thought it was a face. The alien had gray skin that looked like metal and 6 eyes arranged in a circle. When it spoke, its words were somehow in perfect English. "People of Earth, we are the Kraxan Empire. Your planet now belongs to us. Resist, and you will share the fate of your red neighbor." Nobody understood what the alien meant until they looked at the Mars feeds. The Kraxan ships had surrounded the red planet. Energy beams shot out from their ships, and before anyone could react, Mars started breaking apart. In just 10 minutes, humanity's closest planetary neighbor was nothing but floating rocks. The UN Security Council met immediately. Leaders from every country watched the recordings with pale faces. The US president looked sick. The Chinese premier couldn't stop shaking. For the first time in history, all of Earth's nations faced the same enemy. Another message came. "You have 72 hours to surrender. Kneel before the Kraxan Empire, or your world dies next." In underground bunkers, military leaders argued about fighting back. Their best missiles would be like throwing pebbles at a tank. The Kraxan ships had weapons that could break planets. Earth's defenses were useless against that kind of power. But Dr. James Wong, a quantum physicist from Singapore, noticed something interesting in the sensor data. The Kraxan ships gave off weird energy readings when they fired their weapons. He called his colleague in India, Dr. Priya Patel. "Priya, look at these numbers," he said, sending her the data. "Their ships use quantum cores. If we can figure out how they work, we might find a weakness." She finished his sentence. As the clock ticked down, humanity faced its biggest choice: kneel or fight. But in labs around the world, scientists like James and Priya were already working on a plan. If Earth had to burn, maybe, just maybe, they could take the Kraxan with them. The first day ended with the world holding its breath. They had just 2 days left to find a way to fight an empire that could destroy planets. But humans had always been good at doing the impossible, especially when they had no other choice. Dr. James Wong hadn't slept in 36 hours. Empty coffee cups littered his lab at the Singapore Quantum Research Center. The holographic display showed the strange energy patterns from the Kraxan ships, patterns that might hold Earth's only hope for survival. "Look at this," he told Dr. Priya Patel over the video call. "Their quantum cores use crystalline structures. They're not so different from the quantum computers we've been building." Priya leaned closer to her screen in Mumbai. "But their crystals are 1,000,000 times more powerful. How do they keep them stable?" That's when James noticed something odd. The cores seemed to react strangely to certain types of radiation. He ran a simulation, then another. His hands started shaking. "Priya, what if we don't need to match their power? What if we can make their cores destroy themselves?" The next few hours were a blur of calculations and tests. Scientists from every major research center joined their virtual meeting. They called it Project Phoenix. If Earth was going to burn, they'd rise from the ashes. In underground labs, teams worked on creating special radioactive isotopes. These weren't like normal nuclear materials. They were engineered to interact specifically with the quantum properties of Kraxan technology. "It's like finding their exact musical note," explained Dr. Sarah Chen, who joined the project from NASA. "Hit that note hard enough, and their ships will shatter like glass." Military leaders watched the first test with skeptical eyes. A tiny amount of the new isotope was exposed to a piece of crystal similar to the Kraxin cores. The crystal didn't just break. It exploded with enough force to crack the reinforced test chamber. But they needed more than just the weapon. They needed a way to deliver it. That's where Colonel David Martinez came in. His team had been working on microsatellites, thousands of them, each smaller than a coffee cup. "We'll make it look like we're desperate," he explained to the UN Security Council, "like we're throwing up basic satellites as a last defense. The Kraxin won't see them as a threat." Time was running out. They had less than 24 hours left. Around the world, factories worked at impossible speeds to build the satellites. Each one was loaded with the special isotopes, waiting for the signal that would start the reaction. People everywhere prepared for what might be their last day. Some prayed, some partied, some just held their loved ones close. But in labs and military bases, thousands worked without rest. They had one shot at this. If they failed, Earth would join Mars as cosmic dust. Project Phoenix was ready. Now they just had to spring the trap. The final hours ticked away as Earth made its move. Launch sites around the world fired thousands of satellites into orbit. From Russia's steppes to Brazil's coast, rockets lit up the sky like artificial stars. Admiral Khazar of the Kraxin fleet watched with his 6 eyes narrowed. "These humans think their primitive machines can stop us." He growled to his bridge crew. "Let them waste their final hours." On Earth, Colonel Martinez coordinated the launches from NORAD's mountain bunker. Each satellite had to be perfectly positioned. Too close together, they'd give away the plan. Too far apart, the reaction wouldn't work. "How many are up?" he asked his team. 3,000 and counting, sir. Coverage at 60%. In orbit, the tiny satellites looked harmless. Solar panels glinted in the sunlight as they moved into formation. To the Kraxin's advanced sensors, they appeared to be simple communication devices, last-ditch efforts by a dying civilization to stay connected. Meanwhile, in Singapore, Dr. Wong made final adjustments to the isotope triggers. Each satellite carried enough to start a chain reaction, but timing would be everything. Start too early, and the Kraxin would detect the threat. Too late, and Earth would be dust. "The isotopes are stable," he reported to the UN Emergency Council. "But we'll only get one shot at this." Cities worldwide went dark as power was diverted to the satellite network. Millions huddled in basements and shelters, not knowing if they'd see another sunrise. News channels showed the Kraxin ships, dark shapes growing larger as they moved closer to Earth. With 1 hour left, humanity sent its response to the Empire. "We submit," the message read. "Earth accepts Kraxin rule." Admiral Khazar's metallic laugh echoed through his command ship. "Finally, these primitives show wisdom. Prepare the landing ships. I will personally accept their surrender." The massive Kraxin fleet moved into low Earth orbit, their weapons primed just in case. They didn't notice how the human satellites had slowly surrounded them, like a spider's web waiting for its prey. Dr. Priya Patel watched the fleet's approach on her screens in Mumbai. Her hand hovered over the trigger that would activate the isotopes. Everything they'd worked for came down to this moment. "May whatever gods exist forgive us," she whispered, "for what we're about to do." The Kraxin fleet hung over Earth like storm clouds, their massive ships blocking out the stars. Admiral Khazar stood proudly on his bridge, ready to accept humanity's surrender. His victory was about to be complete. Dr. Priya Patel took a deep breath and pressed the button. At first, nothing seemed to happen. Then, one by one, the tiny satellites began to pulse with a faint blue light. The isotopes inside them activated, sending invisible waves of precisely tuned radiation toward the Kraxin ships. The effect was immediate and catastrophic. The quantum cores in the nearest ships began to vibrate, their crystalline structures becoming unstable. Warning alarms blared across the Kraxin fleet. "What's happening?" Khazar demanded, his metallic skin flickering with stress patterns. "Report." "Core instability detected," his engineer screamed. "The humans, They found a way to. The first ship exploded in a blast that lit up Earth's sky like a new sun. The chain reaction spread quickly as ship after ship lost control of their quantum cores. The explosions were visible from the ground, bright flashes that turned night into day. In Nino Rady's bunker, Colonel Martinez watched the destruction with grim satisfaction. How many ships affected? 52% of the fleet, sir, but the others are pulling back. Admiral Khazar had ordered an emergency retreat. Half his fleet was gone, destroyed by technology he'd dismissed as primitive. As his flagship pulled away from Earth's orbit, his 6 eyes burned with rage. "These humans," he growled, "they are more dangerous than we thought. Prepare the remaining ships for bombardment. If we can't have their world, no one will." Back on Earth, celebrations were cut short as the surviving Kraxan ships took up attack positions. They'd won their first victory, but the war was far from over. The remaining ships were out of range of the satellite network, and they had enough firepower to reduce Earth to ash. Dr. Wong rushed into the Singapore Command Center with new data. The isotope reaction was stronger than we expected. Their ship's defenses are compromised. We have a chance to hit them again, but we'll need to get closer. The human military leaders looked at each other. They had struck a mighty blow against the Empire, but the next few hours would determine if humanity had a future. In orbit, the wreckage of Kraxan ships drifted like artificial meteors, a testament to humanity's refusal to kneel. The real battle was about to begin. The remaining Kraxan ships unleashed their fury on Earth. The first plasma beams struck New York, turning skyscrapers to ash. Tokyo followed, then Moscow. But humanity wasn't done fighting. Colonel Martinez had already put Phase 2 into action. While the satellites had been their first trap, Earth's militaries had been busy adapting the isotope technology into weapons they could use. "All units, execute Operation Firefly," he ordered. Around the world, modified fighter jets took off from hidden bases. Each carried missiles loaded with the same isotopes that had destroyed half the Kraxan fleet. They were smaller than the satellites but packed with more concentrated power. Dr. Wong watched from Singapore as the fighters engage. "The isotopes are unstable at this concentration," he warned over the command channel. "They'll only get one shot before the missiles degrade." The first wave of fighters struck from below. The Kraxan ships, focused on bombarding Earth's cities, didn't expect an attack from their blind spot. Missiles streaked upward, trailing blue fire. A Kraxan cruiser exploded as the isotopes triggered its quantum core. Then another. The massive ships tried to retreat, but Earth's fighters were everywhere, striking from all angles. Admiral Khazar watched in disbelief as his fleet crumbled. "Impossible," he roared. These primitives were supposed to kneel. But humanity had learned long ago not to kneel to tyrants. Indian fighters struck from the east, while American squadrons attacked from the west. Chinese bombers came up from the south, their isotope weapons burning through Kraxan shields like paper. The cost was terrible. Hundreds of pilots died, their planes caught in the explosions of dying Kraxan ships. Cities burned under the Empire's revenge attacks, but with each passing hour, more Kraxan ships fell. Dr. Priya Patel worked frantically to send the isotope formula to resistance groups on other Kraxan-controlled worlds. "If we're going to win this," she said, "we need to hit them everywhere." As Earth's skies filled with fire and falling debris, humanity's message spread across the galaxy. The empire that had demanded their surrender was about to learn a harsh lesson. Humans don't just fight back. They fight to win. News of Earth's resistance spread like wildfire through Kraxan space. On thousands of conquered worlds, enslaved species watched videos of human fighters destroying the invincible Imperial fleet. Dr. Priya's isotope formula, transmitted through hidden resistance networks, gave them hope. The Kraxan homeworld erupted in panic. Their High Council, used to crushing rebellions with ease, now faced catastrophe. Ships were exploding in every sector as resistance fighters built their own isotope weapons. Admiral Khazar's flagship limped back to Kraxan Prime, only to find chaos. The Zentari, a species enslaved for centuries, had already destroyed the planet's orbital defenses. Their makeshift isotope bombs, built from Earth's specifications, had worked perfectly. The Empire is falling. Khazar's second-in-command reported, his metallic skin pale with fear. We've lost contact with 30 sectors. The Drachnids have taken control of the eastern arm. The Vulturi fleet has turned against us. On Earth, despite the burning cities and millions dead, humanity celebrated each report of Imperial losses. Colonel Martinez coordinated with alien resistance leaders, sharing battle tactics and weapon designs. Dr. Wong worked with scientists from newly freed worlds, improving the isotope formula. The quantum reaction is spreading faster than we expected, he told the Emergency Council. The Kraxen's entire FTL network is becoming unstable. The Empire's response was brutal but futile. Their remaining ships, scattered and scared, couldn't coordinate their attacks. Every time they gathered in force, resistance fighters struck with isotope weapons, shattering their fleets. 300 years of Kraxen dominance ended in weeks. The species they had forced to kneel now stood tall, armed with human ingenuity and burning with revenge. The empire that had threatened Earth with extinction was itself being wiped from the stars. Admiral Khazar made his final transmission from his burning flagship. We should have left them alone. These humans, they didn't just fight back. They taught the galaxy how to fight back. 3 months after the first Kraxen ships appeared over Earth, representatives from 50 alien species gathered in the rebuilt United Nations building in New York. The air was thick with hope and caution as former enemies became potential allies. Dr. Priya Patil and Dr. Wong sat among Earth's delegates, still amazed by how their desperate defense had changed the galaxy. The quantum isotope technology that had burned the Empire was now being adapted for peaceful uses, powering ships and cities across the stars. We never wanted war, the human ambassador addressed the gathering. We simply refused to kneel. Now we must build something better from the ashes. The Zentari leader, their crystalline form shimmering in the sunlight, spoke next. For centuries, we dreamed of freedom. Humans showed us how to take it. But freedom without unity is chaos. Colonel Martinez, now general, presented the proposal for a Galactic Defense Council. Every species would have an equal voice. No more empires, no more forced submission. Together, they would protect the weak from the strong. The former Kraxen worlds were being rebuilt. Their people, freed from their own empire's oppression, joined the council as equals. The species that had demanded Earth's surrender now worked alongside humans to maintain peace. Earth's cities rose from the ruins, stronger than before. The scars remained. Empty spaces where buildings once stood, memorials to those lost. But humanity had gained something precious, a place among the stars not as conquerors or subjects, but as defenders of freedom. In Singapore, Dr. Wong stood in his rebuilt lab, looking at a piece of Kraxen quantum crystal. Sometimes, he told a group of alien students, the best way to prevent war is to be ready for it. But the best victory isn't destroying your enemy, it's turning them into friends. The galaxy learned 3 important lessons from Earth. Never demand someone to kneel, be ready for them to fight back, and remember that the strongest empires can be brought down by those they thought were weak. Humanity had burned the Empire's worlds to dust, but from those ashes, they helped build a future where no one would have to kneel again.